In your case, in the state side, the judge there actually issued a much broader ruling and blocked the entirety of Measure 114, right? I mean, because there's the permit to purchase law. There's also a magazine ban in this ballot initiative that makes it illegal to make or sell or transfer magazines that hold more than 10 rounds, right? And it even limits the ones that you already own in a large degree as well, too.
Yeah, we decided that since the Oregon Constitution had a provision of the Second Amendment analogous to the Second Amendment to the federal Constitution, the Bill of Rights, that this was the place where we should pursue, legal protection. And in doing so, the judge who heard the case, we requested a temporary restraining order, and the temporary restraining order is asking the judge to suspend the entire law, not any provisions of it, but the entire law. Now, when a judge considers a request for a temporary restraining order, there are two factors. Number one, that the people that are affected are actually injured. There is a detrimental impact on the people that are affected by the law. Secondly, that there is a great chance that we, the people who are bringing the lawsuit, are going to succeed in the long run. In which case, the judge decided, we, based on the merits of our case and our arguments, that we have a very good chance that we're going to win in court. Therefore, the judge issued a temporary restraining order. With the next Tuesday, there will be a hearing where they will consider an injunction, a temporary injunction. What the injunction does is it suspends the law for the entirety of the legal process. While this case goes through the legal process, the temporary restraining order suspends it until the date of the hearing. So it's convoluted and complicated, but that's what the situation is right now.
Right. So currently, this law is not going to be enforced because of the state court ruling. Just to be crystal clear for everybody in Oregon, this law will not go into effect as things stand right now, today.
You are absolutely correct. As of today, the law is not being enforced, and Oregonians are taking advantage of this time right now and are lining around the corner of virtually every gun store in the state, trying to buy all of the guns and ammunition and magazines that they can possibly get because they're concerned that this law may go into effect. But as of right now, the law is not in effect.
And the next hearing is going to be on Tuesday.
Correct.
And that'll be for the preliminary injunction, which is a more permanent order than a temporary restraining order, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And in fact, the Attorney General in Oregon, who's a Democrat there, they attempted to have the state Supreme Court intervene in this case and force the lower court judge to rescind this temporary restraining order, right? But that failed. That's my understanding. Is that correct?
Yes. A very pleasant surprise is that the Supreme Court upheld the temporary restraining order issued by the lower court. And they basically solidified the fact that this law is not going into effect. That is a huge victory for the rights of Oregonians in their ability to exercise their right to keep and bear arms, to purchase, to keep, and to use firearms for lawful purposes. So, yeah, that is there's no place else for them to go unless they want to appeal the ruling of the Supreme Court all the way to the United States Supreme Court, which is the only other option they have, and I don't think they're going to do that.
That's interesting. So for people outside of Oregon or who don't really understand the state court system there, perfectly, can you give a little more insight into why you think that's both a surprise and so significant? Why was this such a big deal that the Supreme Court denied this request?
Well, there's no secret that Oregon politically tends to lean to the left. That is reflected in their court system. But I think the importance of this is that the courts are looking at what happened in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin decision by the United States Supreme Court, and are realizing that, golly, if we go ahead and lift the temporary restraining order and then find out that we're going to have to follow what the Supreme Court said and we're going to lose, that's not a good situation for us to be in. Judges don't like to be wrong. Make no bones about it. A judge who issues a decision, even though it's a politically motivated decision, they still don't like to be wrong. And that's why they go into all of these explanations as to why they decided the way they did, interpreting the Second Amendment and the Constitution the way they do in order to try to, not be wrong. And I think in this case, we're finding that the judges are being realistic and understanding how they are going to have to rule with regards to Second Amendment cases across the board.
Interesting. Interesting. So you think the Oregon Supreme Court was concerned that if they did force this lower court judge to go back on his ruling, that perhaps the United States Supreme Court would step in and overrule them, and they don't necessarily want that to happen.
Well, I think what will happen is that had they lifted the temporary restraining order, and then next Tuesday when we have the hearings on in the federal cases and the state cases, there was I'd say little chance of making an error if they left the TRO in place. This is just supposition on our part as we have watched the courts in Oregon and the political directions that the state has gone in. So we are surmising that these are the situations, and my guess as a very interested observer is that the courts don't want to be wrong on this thing, and they have very little to give up by
interesting
not lifting the TRO and waiting until next Tuesday to see what happens.